Hi gang, Rob here. It is the evening of April 2017. Got a From the Sharpening Bench video for you guys tonight. I posted a picture of this knife today on Instagram and had a couple requests that I do a From the Sharpening Bench video. I almost hesitate to do a From the Sharpening Bench or a initial review of this knife, the Zero Tolerance ZT0456, because after the review I just did of the ZT0850, I've been widely accused of having some horrendous bias against ZT. Why do you even do reviews on ZT knives? Just do a 30-second video saying I hate zero tolerance and be done. Well, I don't hate zero tolerance. In fact, that one comment I just paraphrased made me think. Have there been some positive ZT reviews on the TheApostleP channel? Well, let me count them. Let's see, there's the ZT0550, loved it. I don't know if I did a video on the 200, but I loved it. I think I did. 562, 392, 620, 630, 804, 801 BRZ. That, off the top of my head, there's 8 zero tolerance knives that I generally liked. I do point out their problems when they have them, right? They really messed up their heat treat and grinding of LMAX when they started using it. For a while, ZT used female pivots that weren't restrained in the handle that led to pivot loosening issues, even with Loctite. We made mention of that on this channel. Notice, would you, that on later models, they've gone back to this pivot. Okay, ZT fans, have the videos that weren't glaring love fests on the TheApostleP channel helped you get better ZT knives? I think they have. I don't hate ZT. I rather like ZT. Their machining capabilities and their ability to put together very well constructed knives impresses me. I love old Kershaw stuff. I'm not anti-Kershaw, anti-Kai, anti-ZT. I just think sometimes they need, a little bit of constructive criticism. That brings us to the 456. This is another knife designed for zero tolerance by Mr. Sienkiewicz, father of the 450, the 452, and what's the new one? The 460, the one that has sort of like a trailing point. And then the collaboration with Todd Rexford, the 850. I'll say I don't generally share the same design eye as Dmitry Sienkiewicz. I think he makes some mistakes functionally, and I think some of his aesthetics are a little wacky. But you know what? The design eye is a subjective thing when we're talking about aesthetics, especially. Now, functional issues aren't so subjective. Those are kind of realistic, aren't they? They're kind of objective. What do we have here? Well, we have a Sienkiewicz design. Blade length listed at 3 1/4 inches. I measure this one at 3 3/16. Handle 4 1/2 inches. Blade stock 5/32, 4 millimeters ish, 156 thousandths. I measure this one at. Handle thickness 560 thousandths, 9/16 of an inch. Blade steel. Nothing to see here except goodness. Carpenter CTS 204P. Frame, both sides, 6AL 4V titanium. The back spacer, oh gosh, I think it's aluminum. You guys, that blue anno looks like an aluminum blue to me. Correct me if I'm wrong. In fact, hold on, I'll go look it up. I was correct. The backspacer is aluminum. You can sort of tell this is a blue anode on a piece of titanium. That's the blue anode on aluminum. Different process altogether. Okay, there's a lot actually stuff being deposited on the surface of the aluminum, where titanium is being oxidized to turn colors by electric current. Okay, so the titanium, which is 3D machined, has, I hope the camera can pick this up, has some milled rays, very fine rays in these chamfers. Got sort of a stonewash finish on the flat, and then the chamfers have these milled rays, which are very interesting. They're if you look at them close, I don't know if the camera will pick this up, but they're not continuous lines. They're like little dot matrices of rays. An interesting milling process. Maybe the rays are too fine. Maybe there was no end mill that could do that. But they appeared that the end mill is very small, and it's like sewing stitches. It goes in, mills a depression, comes up, and then right next to it, like this, all the way down. They're not continuous lines. Very interesting. This is a production version of Dimitri's custom pole, P-O-L-E knife, by the way. I think the appearance, the aesthetics of the handle are pretty cool. The facets are rays and the milled lines are rays. Pretty neat. He loses me at the pivot. I don't get it, never have gotten it. That's just me. Some of you guys may think it's gorgeous. I just don't. The blade shape and style very similar to the 850, although I think this is sort of better looking than the 850. Maybe in the overall context of the knife, the handle and the blade really flow together. Again, not in an aesthetic that I particularly appreciate, but I see I appreciate the artistic thought. Pretty functional blade, sort of like a super broad Benchmade 940. Sort of a modified reverse tanto with a little slight harpoonish thing going on with the swedge. Not bad at all. Even though the blade is fairly thick at 5/32, the flat grind is nice and high, well over an inch. Comes to a thin enough dimension behind the edge. My edge bevel is 17 degrees per side on the secondary bevel, and you can see, not overly broad. So that ought to be a decent slicer, huh? And it is. That is nothing to sneeze at right there. Also, while we're looking at that edge, I want you to take a look at something that the Sienkiewicz ZT collaborations frequently get wrong in a big way. The choil on the blade is shaped vaguely like a Sebenza choil, kind of a straight line. Now, although it doesn't quite clear the plunge grind, I've just never been I've never understood why Dimitri designs, the plunge grinds and the choils the way he does. Although, on this particular knife, although the plunge grind isn't finished by the time the base of the cutting edge appears, look at my edge. I did not alter my angle, and I did not enhance the choil. So, with a very slight flare, they sort of got it done on this knife. Very impressive, guys. I will say this, sharpening on an Edge Pro, holding the cutting edge sort of perpendicular to my line of sight on the table, it is necessary with this knife because we have to clear the frame. When we get back to the base of the edge, we really got to turn the knife, which does minimally affect the angle in this area of the blade, but not enough to make a difference, not enough to cause a problem. I think you can see that. Somebody's still going to have to explain to me why I want cutting edge underneath the handle. Don't get it, never have gotten it. Does it help the aesthetics of the knife to do it that way? I don't know. Doesn't help it cut. I know that. Kind of a geometric looking handle. How is it in hand? Because that's kind of a concern when I see something very angular like this. So it is a 4-finger knife, but the pinky is going to be hanging out on the back side of this peak, which isn't a bad thing. It kind of anchors the knife in the hand. It's totally devoid of jimping, not that it's a tactical knife in any way. More of a utility blade. Actually, more of a collection piece, but a decent utility blade shape, and a really solid purchase on the handle in the saber grip. If we go hammer grip, again, very solid. I don't feel any real hot spots. We go draw cut. The flipper tab's there, but not in an obtrusive way. The overhand pinch grip is pretty good. It's really pretty good. I don't know why you'd really ever use this knife in a reverse grip, but if you did, you're gonna engulf that whole handle. But it's good. It's good. Yeah. How about action? You guys all want to know about action, don't you? Well, this is what I don't understand about flippers. If you've ever used a flipper, you know that all makers of flipper knives should just freeze it right there and there, and just put that picture, that image in your CAD. I mean, how hard is this? In what direction are we going to apply force to a flipper? Okay, in a direction that is either pulling straight back, or in a direction where the force is coming straight through the handle of the knife, just behind the pivot. So if you drew a perpendicular to the jimped, slightly concave surface of the top of that flipper, where would it be going? That's right, straight down, just behind the pivot. So if you push straight down on this knife, it just rockets right on out of there. Now, got a lot of you guys like to light switch, so we've got some very grabby, very purposeful jimping. It'll do that just fine too. It is a rocket of a flipper, guys. It does have a little bit of a death detent issue. If you've got your fingers resting on the lock bar, you will lock the knife closed. I just saw a video today from the best place to buy knives, period, knife shipped free, where my dear friend and brother Derek Bone called that user error. Okay, why not? So you just have to keep your fingers off the lock bar when you flip it, and as long as you do, it is a flippin' rocket. And it is a slight shake to get it closed, at least the way this one is set up, which I prefer. I don't like guillotines. You guys know that. Guillotines. It is super smooth. Super smooth and super fast flipper. I would say it is on a par as far as smoothness and flippaliciousness with the line steel Kerr, which I just love, except the geometry of the flipper's wrong. See how the geometry of the flipper's wrong? What's different? Well, yeah, you see it. Draw perpendicular to this flat. It comes down just in front of the pivot. So your pressure is going to be on this front point. There's no way around it. This one, your finger just lies comfortably on the jimped flat. And it works great. These two knives very similar, by the way. Very similar. We'll get into that. In fact, maybe it's time to get into that now. No, let's wait a little bit. One other thing I just wanted to talk about real quick. Construction. And you guys know this is a bit of a pet peeve of mine. At a street price of $240 big ones, I would not expect to see two body screws that go through a through drilled aluminum backspacer and then thread directly into the titanium lock-side scale with no positive locating device other than the pivot and the stop pin. And you guys have heard me harp on this before. Positive points of location, like the Lion Steel Kerr has, or most high quality knives have, in the back end of the knife, are to be desired. Having said that, we have a super centered knife that doesn't appear to move a lot. Now, I haven't taken this apart, put it back together 3 times to see if it always goes back together the same way, but as it sits now, it doesn't appear to be a problem. But in a knife that weighs 6.6 ounces, we ought to get something for our weight. And robust, secure construction ought to be one of those things, just saying. I mean, why have 6.5 ounces or more of titanium and steel and then don't secure it in an industry standard way that always assures both halves of the hand are going to be oriented the same way? Strongly so every time you put the knife back together. That's just, that's one of my things. I think it's valid. It's interesting, I think. Guys will climb all over me for mentioning that. They'll be the same guys who rave about how wonderful integral handles are. Interesting. So they don't want a two-piece handle that is secure and can only be put together one way and can't move. They don't really think that's important over this. They don't think fasteners that are steel threading into steel are important, but they think a one-piece integral handle is important. They don't think this is a liability. That's just kind of interesting. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Okay. So let's just kind of compare these two, shall we? Because I think they're very similar. Let's look at them closed first. They're both about the same height. So right to left, left to right as you're looking at them. They're both of an envelope that conceals the tang and the point in a very seamless way. They both have thick, robust blades. Believe it or not, the Lion Steel is 178 thousandths thick blade stock, thicker than the 460. I don't think it looks like it because of that crowned profile on the Lion Steel spine. That square 90-degree spine just appears more blunt and broad, but it's not. Let's see, 3 3/8 blade on the Lion Steel and 3 3/16 on the ZT. The Kerr, for me, for a sub 3.5 inch knife, is about as heavy a knife as I want to carry. It's 5.7 ounces, and this guy with the shorter blade, 6.6. Man, that's heavy. And I know I've watched a few reviews of this knife, and even people who like it talk about the weight, and they go, "Gee, many frost, it just didn't need to be that heavy." Both very broad blades. They sort of have two different ways of getting to the same point. The 456 has less belly and less sweep. It kind of starts going up from the base of the blade on. The Kerr has more straight and then more of a conventional belly. But the orientation of the tip to the center line of the knife, both knives are about the same. Both are excellent slicers. The full flat ground Kerr gets to about the same dimension behind the edge as the 456 does. And both have excellent flipping action, although a little bit more of a depth detent on the 456 than on the Kerr. A lot more of a conventional, I would say, what I would call a thumb stud detent on the Kerr. which it kind of needs because its thumb stud will kill you if it locks up, unlike this perfect, flipper tab, unlike the perfect flipper tab on the 456. And it is perfect. Everybody should just do that. Everybody. Okay, let's talk about the pocket clip, shall we? It is a fully milled titanium pocket clip. But I'm telling you what, try to pick it up. I mean, it's unbelievably strong. I'm going to try to stick it in my pocket. You guys talk amongst yourselves, and here, have some eye candy when you're doing that. I'm going to try to put it in my pocket. Oh! I needed to stand up anyway. My legs are falling asleep. Okay, it really can't be done with one hand. However, it's not like a pocket ripper either. So, actually, it's not much worse than that clip. So it's a two-hander, but not a bad two-hander. Once you get it started, it slides really easily over the fabric and comes out nicely. So, who's going to buy this knife and why? Well, modern folder guys are going to buy this knife. Guys who like chunky knives are going to buy this knife. Sort of the one of the few of the overbuilts, still coming out as new models today. That ship has kind of sailed, except for this knife in ZT's line. Not a lot of new offerings from them that you would call overbuilt or heavy duty, especially in a less than 3 3/4 inch blade class at 6.6 ounces. Those are some kind of stark numbers. And guys who are looking for that, a sub 3 1/4 inch blade that feels heavy in their hand. Guys who are looking for that are probably going to like this knife. Guys who like size to weight efficiency. If you're looking for like a 3 3/16 inch or 3 7/16 inch blade that in a knife package that weighs 2.9 ounces. You might be looking for something like a Benchmade 940. And no, I didn't pick a Benchmade 940 because Benchmade is always better than zero tolerance. I just picked it because they're pretty stark contrasts. More blade, more cutting edge, about the same slicing geometry, but a different way of getting there. Thinner blade stock, shorter grind, about the same primary bevel angle, but less than half the weight. Okay. So guys who are looking for efficient size to weight ratio are never buying this knife. People that like a big old chunk of titanium and steel in their hand are going to. And as always, or most of the time, ZT does a credible job of getting there. So if it appeals to you aesthetically and the dimensions are right for you, I'm not going to fault it in performance, not even a little bit. It's a great slicer. You already saw that. So there you go. That's my take on the ZT0456. How many times did I say the model number wrong? I had to. That's all for this one, my friends. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember the word. And this here ZT0456 are sharp.